Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let's start. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Khushbu. I'm a PhD scholar at IIT Bombay, and I'm your PMRF TA for the course Introductory Organic Chemistry 2. The course instructor for this course are Professor Nirja Dashaputre and Professor Harinath Chakrapani from ISER Pune. So today we will discuss about the topics they discuss in the week first. So, firstly, we will discuss about the basics of NMR, and then we will discuss about electrophilic aromatic substitution, and then we will discuss the questions. So, let's start with NMR. So, basically, NMR, what information you will get from the NMR data? So, the nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy. So, this nuclear magnetic resonance, it will tell us you about the atomic nuclei that are present in a molecule. We are considering one example of this propanol. So if you consider this propanol, in this molecule we have carbon, we have hydrogen, and we have oxygen. So whatever nuclei is active for NMR, that we can find out like in which environment that molecule or that particularly atomic nuclei is present. As we know that carbon 13 is minor isotope of carbon and is NMR active. And similarly 1H, this is the major isotope of hydrogen, and this is also NMR active. So when we will check the proton NMR or carbon 13 NMR of this molecule, how many different kind of peaks we will get, on the basis of what we will decide that these many different peaks we will get in the molecule. So this we will study today. So basic information that we will get from NMR is it will help us to detect atomic nuclei, and it will also help us to find out what sort of environment these atomic nuclei present in. Okay, NMR is very versatile. It not only for the molecules, but it we will also use NMR for scanning even living human brains. You all must heard about MRI. So that is also an NMR technology in which rather than detecting the atomic nuclei present in a molecule, we will scan human brains. So now let us study the basics. So NMR, what we will do in NMR, we will use a strong magnetic field and we put our molecule or put our nuclei in that magnetic field, and then we will see the changes in that nuclei. So we know that for proton we have two energy levels, and if we apply a magnetic field, so that nuclei can align itself along the field, or it can align itself opposite to the field. When it will align itself along the field, that means its energy is less. So that is the lower energy state possible for that nuclei. And if it aligns itself opposite of that, then that is the higher energy state. Now for a nuclei to go from lower energy state to the higher energy state, some amount of energy is needed that we are applying by this applied magnetic field. So when we will turn off that magnetic field, so that nuclei will return back to the lower energy level, and some energy it will release. That energy we will detect and that signal will come in the form of the spectra that we will study. So all the nuclei are not active, and those nuclei that are active in NMR, the property that depends, like any nuclei will show is NMR active or not, that depends on the spin of that molecule or that nuclei. For example, carbon and hydrogen, their spin is half. So the number of states existing is 2 and I plus 1. As the number of hydrogen atom we are considering is 1, so 2 into half plus 1 is 2. So there are two energy states for carbon as well as for proton. And two energy states are possible, one that is lying along the field and one lying against the field. Because of that difference in energy, the two states will arise. Now, if we were putting a nucleus in a magnetic field, the difference in energy appears because, and that difference in energy depends on two things. First, how strong the magnetic field is, and next one is the magnetic properties of the nucleus itself. Magnetic properties means every nucleus has electrons in, every atom has a nucleus and that is surrounded by electrons. In we have one electron, and in carbon 13, if we are considering the fully filled orbital, it has proton, it is 2 electron in the fully filled configuration, and for carbon it is 8 electrons. So because the electronic distribution is different in both proton and carbon, so their energy difference is also different, and because of this electronic distribution only, the scale for the NMR varies, that we will discuss in the further slides. So if we will increase the magnetic field strength, the energy difference will further increase. But because the energy difference between the nuclear spins is small in the case of proton or this carbon nuclei, therefore the radio waves is of sufficient energy to make that nuclei going to the upper level, and while coming back we record that radio wave and we will get the spectra. For example, this spectra of lactic acid is showing here. So in this case, we have, this is the carbon 13 spectra. So how many different carbons are there? This is the one methyl carbon. Then next is your carbon that is attached to the OH and one hydrogen. And next one is the carbon attached to the two oxygen. So if we will consider these three carbon atoms, so in this case, this carbon atom, carbon 1, I'm numbering is at carbon 2. This is not the IUPAC numbering, just for your reference, I'm giving the numbers. So this one carbon is attached to three hydrogens and one carbon. The second carbon is attached to one oxygen, one hydrogen, and two carbons. And the third one is attached to a oxygen, another oxygen, and one carbon. Now, if we will consider the central carbon atom, carbon 1, carbon 2, and carbon 3, and try to understand the electronic environment about these carbon around these carbons, so we will come to know that oxygen, being electronegative in nature, pulls the electron density toward itself, and the carbon that is attached to that oxygen is having lesser electron density towards. So, because of that lesser electron density, when we will apply a magnetic field, the electrons are not able to shield that carbon. And because it is not shielded, that means the magnetic field, the actual magnetic field felt by that carbon is more than the carbon 2 or the carbon 1. That means it will show signal upfield, sorry, downfield, or we can say it is deshielded. So this signal is for the carbon that is attached with the more electronegative atoms. Then the second carbon that is attached with one electronegative atom will show deshielded signal, but that signal is upfilled as compared to the carbon third. So this is the signal for carbon 2. And the most shielded one is your first carbon. So this is the signal for carbon 1. Is this spectra clear?
Ma'am, I have a doubt.
Yeah.
Like the one which is actually to the left side, that is actually the CH3 carbon, right? That is more shielded. But when
Yes.
it comes to the right hand side, it is a carboxylic acid carbon that is more de-shielded
Yeah.
because of the double bond and that oxygen atom.
Attached to it. Correct.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So uh, let us discuss about why do chemically distinct nuclei absorbs at different frequencies. So we discussed about that every atom has electrons around it, and when these electrons will revolve around the nucleus, they will create its own induced magnetic field that will oppose the applied magnetic field that in which we are putting that nucleus. So that an induced magnetic field will oppose the applied magnetic field, so the actual magnetic field felt by that nucleus is not is different, and that depends on the environment of the atom. That's why different nuclei absorbs at different frequencies. So the changes in electron distribution around the nucleus affected by the local magnetic field nucleus experience, the frequency at which the nucleus resonate, and also that affects the chemistry of the molecule at that atom. For example, if we will consider the example of ethanol, so here we have one hydrogen that is attached to the oxygen. Here the two hydrogens are attached with carbon that is near to the oxygen, and other one is the this CH3 has hydrogens that are little shielded, more shielded than the CH2. Now, if we want to see the chemical change in this molecule, so if we will treat it with any base, so this only this proton will be abstracted by the base, not the other protons, because the acidity of this proton is more than that of the other two other hydrogens present in the molecule. So the distribution of electrons will not only affect the local magnetic field, its NMR, but also its chemical properties also. Okay, so this variation in frequency, we will call it as chemical shift, and we will represent it as delta. Now let us discuss about ethanol. So we have two carbons here. This is the carbon spectra of ethanol. So the one carbon that is attached to the oxygen being electronegative in nature will pull the electron density toward itself. So the carbon having less share of electron density, so it will uh, feel more applied field. That's why it is de-shielded. And if it is de-shielded, it will it will be downfield. So this is the red signal around 60. And then the other carbon that is 2 bond at the 2 bond distance from the oxygen, as oxygen will pull electron density from the adjacent carbon, so this carbon will further pull some electron density because carbon is not electronegative as that of the oxygen. So carbon will be de-shielded but not as much as that of the red carbon. So this is the signal for the CH3. Clear? Any doubt in the spectra? Okay, so let us discuss about chemical shift scale. So um, we discussed about energy frequency, but the scale that we are using for NMR, we expressed it in the parts per million, because if we will consider the energy or frequency as the scale, and if we are changing the applied magnetic field, suppose we are doing one sample of ethanol in a 400 megahertz machine or in a 600 megahertz machine. And if we are considering our scale in the terms of energy or frequency, then on changing the applied magnetic field of that instrument, our signals will become, or the position of the signals will change based on the applied magnetic field or the frequency of that machine. So to standardize that, or to make that like a system uniform, we are using the scale parts per million. That will help us, like in whatever frequency machine we are recording the spectra, our molecules will give the same RF value, or same position. The signals will come at the same position in all the machines. That's why we are using parts per million as our chemical shift scale. And based on one reference, we will record our spectra. That reference is tetramethylsilane for 1H and carbon 13. So tetramethylsilane, this silicon is electropositive in nature, and being electropositive, these carbons, or all these carbons are equivalent. So we can say that this tetramethylsilane was coming upfield than any of the organic molecules. So we will consider it as zero in the carbon 13 and proton spectra. And based on this reference sample, we will consider all the peaks of the other protons and carbons present in the molecule. So this is our reference. Now, how we will calculate chemical shift value? So chemical shift value will is the um, is defined by this formula, that frequency of that proton or carbon or that nuclei that is absorbing in hertz, minus the frequency of TMS in hertz divided by frequency of TMS in megahertz. So the units comes out to be ppm. So in the case of this lactic acid, as we saw, that on the basis of the reference compound in all the machines, whether we will record it in 400 megahertz, whether we will record in 600 megahertz, the lactic acid spectra, carbon 13 spectra, will be similar in all the machines. So that's why we are using a reference sample as TMS, that is different than any other organic molecules that we want to analyze using NMR. And the spectra we already studied, that this carboxylic acid carbon is attached to the two oxygen, is downfilled, most downfilled. Then this is the carbon that is attached to the one of the oxygen, so it is comparatively upfilled. And the CH3 is most upfilled because it is not attached to any of the electronegative atom. Now let us discuss about the regions of carbon 13 NMR spectrum. So broadly we can divide the carbon 13 spectrum in four regions. The first region is from 0 to 50, that describes the carbon that is attached to the carbon only, or this is, we can call it as saturated carbon atoms. So if we have your methyl group that is attached to some alkyl chain, if we have CH2 attached to alkyl chain on both side, if we have CH attached to alkyl chain, so these kind of carbons will come around 0 to 50. Then the next region is for saturated carbon atoms that are attached to the heteroatoms. It can be oxygen, it can be fluorine, it can be any other halogen atoms, sulfur. So this region belongs to the those carbon that are attached to oxygen or any heteroatom. That is from 50 to 100. Then the next region is from 100 to 150. This is for the unsaturated carbon atoms, whether it is aryl or alkenic or alkyne. And the region from 150 to 200, this is for unsaturated carbon atoms that are attached to oxygen. So your carboxylic acid, ester, aldehyde, ketone, all those carbons will come in this region. So let us take again the example of lactic acid, and let us see whether this classification is correct or not. So if we are considering lactic acid, so this carbon that is attached to the heteroatoms and through a uh, double bond, right? So this is unsaturated carbon attached to the oxygen. So this delta value for this carbon is 176.8. That means it will rise in the region fourth, 150 to 200. Then the next carbon that is saturated that is attached to the oxygen atom, its delta value is 66. It lies between 50 to 100. Then the CH3 that is saturated and is not attached to any heteroatom. So this delta value is 19.9. So it lies in the first region, 0 to 50. So broadly, we can classify our carbon 13 spectra into four regions. First, saturated carbon atoms. Second is for saturated carbon atoms, but that is attached to some heteroatom. Third is your unsaturated carbon atoms, whether it is alkenic, alkyne, or aryls. And fourth is your unsaturated carbon atoms next to your oxygen or heteroatoms. Is this clear? Any doubt in this region classification? Okay.
Ma'am, what about the peak where carbon is attached to OH?
That is like your, if it is saturated, then we will consider it in the second region. If it is unsaturated, then we will consider it in the fourth.
Ma'am, there will be a change in value if the saturated carbon combines with unsaturated carbons.
Yeah, like shift will be there, but like on a broader scale, we can say that will come in that region only. But in that region, it will be up downfield.
Ma'am, can you give any example like this?
For example, if we have this, if I'm considering this molecule, in this case, this carbon is attached to a heteroatom also, and it is next to your alkene also, right? So this should be in the region of 50 to 100. So if we will consider that this alkene was not there in this case, so then it will be around 58 or 60, this carbon that is attached to the oxygen. But because it is attached to the alkene also here, so this will become more downfield, or maybe it will come around 70 78 to or 90 region. So in that region only it will go downfield. And if more electronegative groups will attach, then it can go in the olefinic region also. Is this fine?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Got it.
So now, what are the different ways of describing your chemical shift? So if we are considering our this carbon 13 spectra, that is that we divided in the four regions, 0 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 150, and 150 to 200. So in this case, we have the region that is near to zero, we will call it as shaded region, because all the carbons that are having more electron density will come in this region. So this is shielded. These are the terms that you have to aware about. So that's why we are discussing this. So the region near to zero is shielded, and near to 200 is deshielded. Then, what about frequency? As we are moving from left to right, sorry, as we are moving from 0 to 200, so the frequency is increasing. So, this is the low frequency region near to 0, and this is your high frequency region near to 200. Then, if we are talking about field, we will call upfield the shielded region, and downfield the deshielded region. D from, you can remember it as D for deshielded and D for downfield. So the downfield region is deshielded one, and upfield region is shielded one. And if we are considering the chemical shift value, so from numbers only we can get the idea that shielded region has smaller delta value, and de-shielded region has larger delta value. Okay. Now in this molecule, I'm giving it number A. uh, Carbon I'm donating as A and B. Now tell me, A is upfield or downfield in
Towards
carbon.
downfield.
Okay, others? As this carbon is attached to the heteroatom, so that means electron density will be uh, pulled by the oxygen atom. So this is de-shielded. That means it is downfield. So A is,
Downfield.
yeah, correct, downfield, and B,
Upfield.
upfield. And this upfield
Yes,
and
ma'am.
downfield are the relative terms. If A is downfield, then on the comparison of that, we are telling that it is upfield. Now let us discuss about some examples of carbon 13 spectra. So this is hexane dioic acid. Is there any plane of symmetry in this molecule?
Yes, ma'am.
So from here we can see that there is a plane of symmetry. So for symmetrical molecules, we will get only one signal for the similar kind of nuclei. For example, here this carboxylic acid, this carboxylic acid carbon and this carbon are equivalent. So this we can say this is one and this is one. So these both carbons will show one signal in the carbon 13 spectra. Then the second carbon attached directly to the carboxylic acid will show one signal. And the third carbon, that is little far, will show one signal. So as there are six different carbon atoms in the hexane dioic acid, but the number of signals we are getting is three, because whenever you have plane of symmetry in any molecule, then the number of signals will be decided. Equivalent carbons will give only one signal. And the how we will come to know that there are how many number of carbons, based on the integration we will get this idea that how many carbons are there in the molecule. Now let us discuss about the chemical shift. So this carbon, carbon number 1, that is attached to the 2 oxygen atom. In which region it will come?
Deshielded region.
De-shielded region, but we classify it in the 4 regions. So in which region it will come? This is a carbon attached to oxygen.
150 to 200 ppm.
Correct. So this carbon is attached to oxygen and through a pi bond, unsaturated one. So this comes in the region of, so I'm writing here carbon 1. So this will come in the region of 150 to 200. And it is coming here at around 170. So this is for the carboxylic acid. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then now next, carbon 2. Is this attached to any heteroatom?
No, ma'am.
No. So this should come in the region of
0 to 50 ppm.
0 to 50 ppm. Carbon 3,
Similarly, it will come to 0 to 50 ppm
0 to
because it is
50 ppm.
shielded.
Correct. Now, as both of the carbon 2 and carbon 3 are not attached to any heteroatom, so now we have to decide the relative position of these two carbons. The carbon that is attached or that is near to the carboxylic acid will be de-shielded, and the carbon that is far away from the carboxylic acid will be shielded. So based on that, we can say that carbon 2 is de-shielded as compared to carbon 3. So by seeing the spectra, we can say that this signal is for carbon 2 and this is for carbon 3. Fine.
Ma'am, since one CS2 is attached to carboxylic acid, so it is like to a certain extent it is kind of de-shielded compared to carbon 3.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, ma'am.
And this brown signal is for your DMSO. Spectra is recorded in DMSO. That's why this is for the solvent. Okay.
Like ma'am, for CDCl3, like but this peak will come around 40 ppm.
70. 77.
70. Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Now let us discuss about other molecule, haptanone. Haptane 2-on. So let us number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now the carbon 2, we can easily identify in which region it will come.
150 to 200 ppm.
150 to 200 ppm. So by seeing the spectra, we can say clearly that this signal is for carbon 2. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the carbon that is near to this carbonyl, that is two carbons are
0
there,
to 50
carbon
ppm.
1 and carbon 3. So this should come in the region of 0 to 50.
50 ppm.
These should be downfield, right?
Ma'am, upfield, ma'am.
Down, upfield as compared to the this
Okay, ma'am. Okay, got
carbon
it.
with carbon. I'm
Okay,
comparing
ma'am.
it
Got
with
it.
carbon 4, carbon 5, carbon 6, and carbon 7. So based on like relative position of carbon 1 and carbon 3, relative to carbon 4, 5, 6, and 7 is downfield. Is that fine?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So we can say that these two carbons or this region is for carbon 1 and carbon 3, that is downfield as compared to the other 4 carbons. Then this is the region where your carbon 4, 5, and 6 lies, but you can't distinguish between them so clearly because all the carbons are having the same kind of environment around them. And this methyl is the most shielded one because it is farthest away from your carbonyl carbon. So this is your carbon 7. Is this clear? Any doubt?
Ma'am, in the spectra, like like carbon second should come around 150 to 200 ppm, right? But the carbon 2 spectrum is coming beyond 200. Like, is it like more de-shielded?
Yeah, this is that depends on molecule also. This is the carbonyl carbon. The region is from 150 to 220, but we will consider like on the classification we consider it from 0 to 200.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, carbonyl
Got it,
carbons
ma'am.
can
Got it.
come up to 220.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the next molecule, paracetamol. Everyone should be aware of. So in this case, now this carbonyl amide carbon, this will come in the region of 150 to 200. This is the most deshielded carbon. Carbonyl carbons are the most deshielded carbon in any molecule. So the this carbon that is in the range of around 170, this is for your carbon 1. That is the amide carbon. Okay. Then the CH3 that is attached to the carbonyl is in the region of, tell me the region.
0 to 50 ppm.
0 to 50. So this is the signal for CH3. Now we have to find out the regions for your ortho position and your meta positions relative to the OH group and the amide group. Now, if we will consider this OH group, so it will have a plus R effect on the aromatic ring, this benzene ring. So we can say that the position that is ortho to this OH should be shielded, correct? If instead
Yes,
of
ma'am.
this amide, if here we have NH2 and here we have OH, in this case if we are comparing, then the positions ortho to the NH2 will be more shielded, because the donating power of lone pair donating power of nitrogen is more than that of the oxygen because of its less electronegativity. But because in this case nitrogen is attached to the carbonyl carbon, so its electrons are already involved in conjugation with the carbonyl carbon, so the tendency to give electrons to the ring is less than that of the oxygen, that is giving electron density purely to the aromatic ring. So that's why this uh, carbons that is ortho to the hydroxyl group are shielded in this case than that of the carbons that are ortho to the nitrogen. And this is symmetrical molecule. So these two, 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, these symmetrical molecules, so these two carbons will show only one one signal. Any doubt in this spectra? Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Clear.
Now let us discuss about 1H NMR spectrum. So let us take consider the example of acetic acid. In acetic acid, we have methyl protons and a proton of carboxylic acid. So these two type of protons are there. So there should be two signals in this spectra. Now the CH3 proton that is attached to the carbon is uh, like we can say that is shielded on the similar basis as we saw for the carbon, and this hydrogen that is attached to the oxygen will be deshielded because of the electronegative nature of the oxygen. So the signal in green is for CH3 and the signal in red for OH. Regions we will discuss in further slides. And if the we will see the carbon 13 spectra, then the carbonyl or the ester peak acid peak will come in the region of 150 to 200, and the CH3 will come in the region of 0 to 50.
Yes, ma'am. Got it.
So any doubt?
No, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. No doubts, ma'am. Got it.
So now let us discuss about regions of carbon proton spectra. So we can divide the region in like broadly we can divide it into the two parts. One is from 0 to 5, that represents the hydrogens that are bonded to the saturated carbons, and other is from 5 to 10, that represents the hydrogens attached to the unsaturated carbons. Now if we will see the carbon 13 spectra and the proton spectra lies in the region of 0 to 10, whereas carbon spectra lies in the region of 0 to 220. Why is this so? Because in case of proton, only two electrons are there in the valence orbit, fully filled valence orbital of the hydrogen. But in the case of carbon, there are eight electrons. So the distribution of electrons or the possibility of the different environment in the case of hydrogen is less. So the scale is smaller for the proton spectra. But in the case of carbon, eight electrons can distribute in variety of ways. So that's why we need a larger scale for the carbon 13 spectra. And moreover, abundance is, also plays a role. Abundance of carbon 13 spectra, carbon 13 is lower than that of the proton. That is also the reason that scales are different for the proton and for the carbon. Now, so let us discuss more brief, um, how the regions of proton and NMR spectrum we can classify. So we saw that from 0 to 5, all the protons that are attached to the saturated system will come, and after 5, unsaturated system will come. So from the region from 0 to 3, we can say that all the saturated carbon that are attached to the carbons only, that will come in this region, whether it is of CH, it is CH2 or CH3. When your carbon, that hydrogen we are considering, it is attached to the only carbon. If your hydrogen or the carbon having hydrogen is attached to some heteroatom, that comes in the region of 3 to 4.5 oxygen, or it can be halogen. Then from 4.5 to 6.5, your alkenes will come, and aryls will come in the region of 6.5 to 8.5, and aldehyde or acid, these protons will come in the region of 8.5 to 10.5. So this is the classification for the protons that are attached to the carbon. So if it is attached to the saturated carbon from 0 to 3, 3 to 4.5, if it that proton or that carbon containing proton attached to the heteroatom, it is coming in the region of 3 to 4.5. Then 4.5 to 6.5 for alkenic or alkenic region, 6.5 to 8.5 for aryl region, and for 8 from 8.5 to 10.5 for aldehydes, carboxylic acid, that region. Now, based on this, let us discuss some examples. First, let us take the example of benzene. In case of benzene, all the protons are equivalent, so the proton signal will come around 7.5, 7.57. And in the carbon, for this benzene, the signal will come around 125 ppm. This you should aware of, or this values you can remember for some time, because when we will discuss about aromatic electrophilic aromatic substitution, we will see the difference in the delta values based on this, relative to this value. Now we discussed that difference between carbon and proton spectra arises because proton 1H is the major isotope of hydrogen, and its natural abundance is more, while carbon 13 is the minor isotope that exists only in the 1.1%. Then 1H NMR is quantitative, means in case of proton NMR, when we are considering the peak in the proton NMR, area under the curve will tell you how many equivalent protons are there in that for that peak. But in case of carbon 13 NMR, every single peak will correspond to one carbon only. Then protons interact or couple with each other, like if we have this CH3 CH2OH. In this case, we can see in carbon 13 two peaks will be there, and those two different peaks will correspond for the different carbon atoms. But in case of 1H NMR, we will see three signals, but those three signals or those three peaks will correspond for one for three carbons, one for two carbons, and one for, sorry, one, I will explain this again. In the case of proton 1H NMR, we will get three signals. This one signal is for three protons, other signal is for two protons, and one is for one proton. So this means by quantitative that area under the peak will give you how many same kind of protons are there attached to the carbon. And 1H NMR is more reliable than that of the carbon spectra, and it will give us more information than that of the carbon spectra. So these are the differences in the proton and the carbon spectra. Now integration, as we saw previously, that it will tell us how many same kind of protons are there in that signal, or that signal corresponds to the how many um, number of protons. And for getting the integration, now we will do uh, like softwares are there for analyzing the NMR spectra. MNOVA is there, Topspin is there, that we will use, that will give you integration manually also, and automatic you can get also. But previously when that automation was not there, we will saw the height of that peak in the NMR spectrum. And by comparing the height, like here the height, integral height is 6 mm, and for this is 18 mm. So by taking the ratio of these protons, we will come to know that this one peak will correspond for one proton, and this will correspond for three protons. This is for, sorry, this is for the acetic acid. But if you have a symmetrical molecule, then in that case, if we are considering the ratio, then sometimes it will be problematic to find out that whether this 1 is to 3 is for 1 and 3 protons, or it is for 2 protons. So for the symmetrical molecules it is difficult, but in the current scenario we can easily find out how many protons are there based on the structure of the molecule, or based on the molecular formula that we are aware of. Similarly, in this case we can say the ratio comes out to be 6 is to 4, so 3 is to 2. Okay, so integration just tell you about,
Ma'am, can you explain how the ratio?
sorry,
Can you explain how the ratio has been obtained? Like, I have a doubt in it.
like when you will do the NMR spectrum, then by integration option was there. When we will select that option, then the like here this downside this arrow number will come. If it will show here 3, it will show here 1. So by seeing that number, you will get the ratio.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, this you will learn when you will do the spectra actually. For now you just understand that whenever you are doing any spectra, so the peak height in the proton will give you area under the peak, will give you the number of protons for that number of protons for that peak. So now in the case of aromatic compounds, or in case of alkenes, the or simply we will consider the benzene ring. In that case, aromatic protons will come at downfield. If we will consider cyclohexene, and if we will consider benzene, if we will compare that, in this case of benzene it will come around 7.5, and this will come around 5.6. Both are alkenes, then why is the difference in the delta values of these two protons? This is because in the case of aromatic compounds, your pi electron cloud, when it will revolve, it will create an induced field, and around the corners it will align along the magnetic field, so that proton will be more deshielded, and in the center of the ring that will oppose the magnetic field, so that is the shielded region. So all the protons that are lying at the boundary of benzene ring will be in the d-shielded region. That's why these protons will be downfielded than the protons that are attached to the alky. Is this clear?
Could you repeat once again?
Okay. I'm telling, like, if we are comparing cyclohexene with benzene protons. So in the case of proton also, this carbon having a double bond and the proton is attached to the same carbon. In case of cyclohexane also, your carbon having a double bond is attached to the, sorry, the proton having attached to the carbon is forming a double bond. So in both the cases, why the difference in the delta values come? This is because in case of aromatic compounds, when the pi electrons will revolve, they will create an induced field that at the corners will align along the field, and making like that proton will experience more magnetic field. So that's why it is de-shielded. And in the center of that aromatic ring, the current will be opposite of that of the applied magnetic field, so that region is shielded. But because no protons is lying inside the ring, that's why all the protons of the benzene ring lying outside, that is in the de-shielded region, that's why they are coming downfield as compared to the cyclohexene. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, when
Um,
we will attach some groups to the benzene ring, then as the electron density on the benzene ring will increase, so the shieldedness of that proton will increase. And if we will attaching a electron withdrawing group, then the electron density on the benzene ring will decrease. So the protons will become more de-shielded. For example, in the case of amine, this amine will donate the electron through plus R effect. So electron density on the carbon will increase. So that means this proton now will be shielded. So it will be upfield. Then compared to the other hydrogens that are attached to the benzene. Is this fine?
ma'am, last one, can you repeat, please?
Okay. And like whenever your benzene ring is substituted with a group, let us call this is X. If X is your electron donating group, so electron donating group will increase the electron density on the benzene ring. That means more electrons will be there on the benzene ring, so the protons will be shielded. So this signal will come upfield. And if your X is electron withdrawing group, so it will pull the electron density from the benzene. That means the magnetic field now felt by that proton will be more. So in that case, your protons will be de-shielded and signal will come downfield. Is this clear?
Like in the case of electron donating group, when the group donates electrons towards the benzene ring, so which
Yeah.
means the electrons are flowing inside the benzene ring. So which means the proton becomes like shielded, because there in this case the center opposes the magnetic field, so it is shielded region.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. But in the case of electron withdrawal group means like it will tend to pull electrons. So which means since it's pulling electrons, so which means it is becoming electron deficient. So which means it is aligning with the magnetic field. So that's why it's de-shielded.
Yeah. And it is not on
Okay.
the like alignment, we are not considering around the field or inside the field, just we are telling that if electron density will be pulled by the some group, so electrons that are surrounding or that are in the surrounding of that proton will be pulled back. So that means it will now de-shielded. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now let us consider some examples. So in case of electron withdrawing group, if we will compare the electron withdrawing strength of the different groups, so nitro, in case of nitrobenzene, or if we have carboxylic acid, nitrile benzaldehyde, or trifluoro CF3 group. So in this case, by seeing this delta values, you will come to know that in the case of nitro compound, the ortho proton is coming at delta value of 8.48. In case of benzoic acid, it is coming at 8.1. For nitrile, 8.1. Aldehyde, 8.07. And in the case of CF3, 7.78. So, by seeing this example, it is clear that as the electron withdrawing nature of the group will increase, your protons will become de-shielded. In the case of CF3, it will pull the electrons by minus I effect, and based on the minus I effect is weak, so that's why this proton is shielded, comparatively shielded than the other cases. Is this clear?
Can you repeat?
See, in the case of nitro group, electron density will be pulled towards nitro group. Correct? So here delta positive will come. This delta positive means the electron density around the proton will be less than that of the benzene. So in the case of benzene, the proton will come around 7.27. So it is in the presence of nitro group, this proton becomes more de-shielded. So the value of that proton delta value will become downfield, more downfield. So this is at 8.48. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now we will compare nitro with COOH group, carboxylic acid group. Nitro is more electron withdrawing than COH. That's why the value is comparatively, compared to the nitro, it is upfield, 8.1. Similarly, we can say in the case of nitrile group, it is 8.1. So carboxylic acid and nitrile both have the same kind of effect, but in comparison to nitro, they are less electron withdrawing. Aldehyde is even more less electron withdrawing, so the value comes around 8.07. And CF3 is pulling the electrons by minus I effect rather than minus R, so that's why the value is coming around at 7.78. These exact value no one will ask you. You just have to come up the if anyone will ask you the questions about the order or arranging them in the increasing order of the delta values, for that case I'm explaining this. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, if halogens are attached to the benzene ring, benzene proton will come around 7.27. Now halogens can show minus I effect also and plus R effect also. So because of this competition between minus I and plus R, in this case the values come near around 7.27 only. For example, in the case of iodide 7.4, in case of bromine 7.32, in case of chlorine 7.24, in case of fluorine 7 value. Because in the case of fluorine 2p orbital overlap will be there, so lone pair electron donation is easy, so that's why it is shielded as compared to the other halogens. Okay, so in case of halogens, you will remember that the values will come around near to 7.27 because of the competition between minus I and plus R, that balance will come. Okay, so now we have some idea about NMR. So let us discuss about electrophilic aromatic substitution. So if we have ketone in our system and we are treating it with acidic D2O, so I'm considering the example of pentane 3 on here, and we are treating it with acidic D2O. D2O is deuterated water. So in uh, acidic medium, D2O will get protonated, or in this case we will get DO3 positive. So when your ketone will react with this species, so the oxygen having lone pair will abstract the deuterium, and your deuterated water will leave. So then this deuterated water will abstract the alpha proton that is acidic in nature, and this enol we will get. And after the loss of that D positive, we can get this alpha deuterated compound. Now, why this equilibrium sign is shown here? Because in the case of acidic medium, all that ketoenol tautomerism will be there, and enol form is less stable than that of the ketone form, so it is reversible in nature. That's why this equilibrium will come, because of the more stability of the ketone form than the enol form. And if we will keep it for the if we will repeat the same process, then all the alpha positions can be substituted by deuterium. Now, how this enol system is different from the phenol? Phenol, if we are considering, that is also the enol form. If we want to write the ketonic form of this, so we can write this way, correct? But in case of phenol, your enol form is more stable than that of the ketone form, because of the aromaticity arised in the system. Aromaticity leads to the stabilization. That's why in the case of phenol, your enolic form is more stable than the ketone form. So if we are considering phenol, so the spectra will look like this, where how many signals should be there? Any symmetry is there?
Yes, ma'am.
So here is the plane of symmetry. So that means orthoprotons will show one signal, metaprotons will show one signal, and your paraproton will show one signal, and one signal for this OH. So there should be four signals in the phenol spectra. This one is for which one will be deshielded, aromatic ones or OH one?
Aromatic ones.
Aromatic one. So that means this is the shielded one. So this corresponds to the OH, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Now OH is electron donating group. So that means there will be more electron density at ortho and para position. So that ortho and para position. So because of that, meta position will be the most deshielded one. So this signal is for meta protons. That is the most deshielded one. Then if we are considering the minus I effect of OH, so the ortho protons are near to the minus I group, so they are deshielded then compared to the para protons. So this signal is for para, and this one is for ortho. Clear?
Can you just explain the signal once again?
Okay.
Like I didn't get it.
See, when oxygen will give electrons to the electron density to the benzene ring, so I can write one of the um, so this is the resonating form, where negative charge is come at the ortho position or at the para position. So that means more electron density will be there at ortho and para position. So the proton is shielded. Correct? But
Yes, ma'am.
but electron density will never be more at the meta position. So that means these meta protons will be more uh, de-shielded. So the de-shielded one will be the meta protons. Now if we want to compare ortho and para, then that we can compare on the basis of minus I effect. That depends on distance. So as ortho protons are near to the minus I group, so that will be more de-shielded as compared to the para protons. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Now what we will
Ma'am,
do,
but in this case, like since electrons don't go towards the metabolism, so that's the reason why they are de-shielded.
because electrons will not reach to that site, that's why they are de-shielded.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, got it.
Now if we will shake the phenol solution with D3O positive, so what will happen? Your ortho position can be substituted by the deuterium, your para position can be substituted by deuterium, and your OH can be substituted by deuterium. But because electron density will never go at the meta position, so the meta signal will remain same. But some suppression will be there in the case of ortho and para and your OH signal. So from this spectra, it is clear that whatever explanation we are theoretically assuming is correct. Okay. And how that will happen? So in the case of if we are treating the phenol with the D3O positive, so when the electrons will come, oxygen will donate the electrons, then at the para position deuterium can come, or by extended conjugation it can come at para position, but never this deuterium can attach to the meta position. Is this clear?
Once again, can you repeat?
Okay. When we have phenol and we are treating it with D3O positive, so in this case first that oxygen will take attack on the this D3O positive. So it will take this deuterium and this will go. So first thing that will happen is ODH positive. This will form. And after the loss of this proton, this can form OD. Up to this it is fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Now next thing is when oxygen will donate lone pair to the benzene ring, then it can attack from the ortho position to abstract the deuterium from D3O positive, and it can form,
Yes, ma'am.
it can have this deuterium at the ortho position, and here also proton is there. Now there are chances that a reversible process can take place, or your proton will leave to get the aromaticity, regain of aromaticity. So in that case, deuterium will come at the ortho position. Similarly, if we will do extended conjugation, when your OD is there and it will donate electrons here, this will come here and then attack from the para position, it will take deuterium. So in that case, deuterium can come at the para position.
Okay, ma'am.
So these are the two cases. Okay. So but deuterium will never come at the meta position. That's why whenever we are shaking phenol with the D3O positive, meta signal will remain same, but your ortho and para signals will suppress and your OH signal will disappear. Okay. And this suppression will tell you that all the processes are reversible, so complete suppression is not there, just disappear, like signal height will decrease, or more molecules are there that are deuterated. Now
Ma'am, why orthogonal gets suppressed?
because when your deuterium is not NMR active. So if the molecules are there that are having deuterium in that, so that signal will not come. So the peak height will
Okay, ma'am.
decrease. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
But for meta, the height will increase.
Meta will remain same.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Only for orthopi, the height will decrease
Yeah.
because deuterium signal is not shown.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am.
Now, benzene we can show in two ways, like electron density will revolve around all the atoms, or it is in other way of showing the benzene ring. Now let us see the difference of electrophilic attack on benzene and your cyclohexene. So if we have cyclohexene and we are treating it with bromine, so we already know that we get dibromo compound, bromo addition compound, bromine addition compound. And if we are treating it with peracid, we will get epoxide. But if same reaction condition, we are using benzene, we will not observe any kind of reaction. Now, what reaction we will observe when we are treating bromine with AlCl3? We will observe that your proton is substituted by bromine. Hydrogen is substituted by bromine. If we want to see the mechanistic view of this reactions, in case of cyclohexene, when we are treating it with bromine, so first bromonium ion will form, and the Br negative will attack from the opposite face of the bromonium ion and open up that bromonium ion to get this trans addition product. But in case of benzene, when you have bromine in the presence of some Lewis acid, so first that bromine having lone pairs and Lewis acid is electron deficient in nature, so it will attack at that Lewis acid and it forms a more reactive species that is electrophilic in nature now. So the aromatic ring will attack at the bromine and your leaving group will leave. Now, after the loss of proton, aromaticity regain will take place and substitution will happen. So, if you are treating alkene with bromine, addition reaction will take place. If you are reacting benzene with bromine in presence of some Lewis acid, substitution reaction will take place. So, this is important that benzene is unreactive for addition reaction, but it is reactive for substitution reaction. Now, in all of the electrophilic aromatic substitution reaction, your intermediate is delocalized cation. And general mechanism is first the benzene will attack on the electrophile to form this intermediate cation, and then after the loss of proton, aromaticity will regain. So this way we can show that benzene will attack on the electrophile, and after the addition of electrophile, this intermediate cation will form. And after the loss of proton, you will get substituted benzene. Okay, and these are the different resonating structures of your intermediate carbocation, and because of the delocalization only, this carbocation is stable. And this way we can show that the positive charge is distributed on the three carbon atoms, and this carbocation is stable. And after the loss of proton, aromaticity regain was there. If chances of aromaticity regain was not there, then the aromatic substitution will not happen in that case. Let us consider some examples for that. First is your nitration of benzene. When you are treating benzene with nitric acid in presence of sulfuric acid, you will get nitrobenzene. That means your hydrogen is substituted by nitro. What is the mechanism for this? Nitric acid will abstract one of the proton from the sulfuric acid and it will get protonated. After the loss of water, it will form nitronium ion. Now nitronium ion, nitrogen is being electrophilic in nature. Your benzene ring or will attack on this nitronium ion, and after the loss of proton you will get nitrobenzene. Clear?
Yes, ma'am, clear.
Okay. Similarly, if we are considering sulfonation of benzene, then we are treating it with sulfuric acid. So the sulfuric acid, one molecule, will abstract proton from the other molecule, and after the loss of proton it will form this cation. Then benzene will attack at the sulfur to neutralize the positive charge on the oxygen, and after the loss of proton you will get benzene sulfonic acid. And this is more acid, comparatively equivalent acidic to the sulfuric acid. And if we want to get the crystals of this compound with benzene sulfonic acid, we can get by treating it with NaCl, and it will form crystalline sodium benzene sulfonate. So benzene on reaction with SO3 in the presence of H2SO4 will give you benzene sulfonic acid. Then the next reaction is alkyl and acyl substituents can be added. The reaction we will call it as Friedel-Crafts alkylation or Friedel-Crafts acylation. So if now how we will generate carbocations, and which one is the most stable carbocation? Most stable carbocations are the tertiary carbocations that are the most reactive one. So if we have a tertiary alcohol and we are reacting it we are treating it in the acidic medium, then it will abstract the proton and a tertiary carbocation will form. This tertiary carbocation, when react with benzene, after the it will attack on that tertiary carbon, and then after the loss of proton, it will we will get the alkyl substituted benzene. Similarly, if we will treat tertiary alkyl chloride in the presence of some Lewis acid, then also it will form a tertiary carbocation that on attack with benzene will form alkyl substituted benzene. If we have acid chloride, in that case, acid chloride on treatment with AlCl3, similar kind of reaction will happen and you will get acylium ion. That is the intermediate here. Then benzene will attack at the carbon to neutralize the positive charge on the oxygen, and you will get this intermediate, which on loss of proton will give you acyl substituted benzene. So this is Friedel-Crafts acylation. And these are Friedel-Crafts alkylation. Clear?
Yes, ma'am, clear.
Okay. So this is the energy diagram. We are plotting energy with the reaction coordinate. So we know that the starting material is having some energy, and when your intermediate will form, when benzene will lose its aromaticity by attacking on the electrophile, then the species generated is your carbocation intermediate, and this intermediate is the this step is the rate determining step. So rate determining step must have higher energy, so that's why the energy of going from start this benzene to the carbocation intermediate is higher, and then that intermediate after the loss of proton will lead to the more stable aromatic compound, so that's why the energy will decrease. So this is the energy profile diagram for your substitution, electrophilic aromatic substitution reaction. Is this clear?
Ma'am, can you please explain after the formation of intermediate?
After the loss of proton we are getting a stable compound, so that's why energy is released in that step. So the rate determining step is the first step where your intermediate is forming, carbocation intermediate is forming.
Okay, ma'am. After the loss of one hydrogen, then the product will be formed.
Yeah.
The aromaticity will be regained. So
Yeah.
that's why the energy becomes low.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So now let us discuss about questions. Okay. So, which of the following have correct arrow pushing sequence? Everyone should try to answer. When benzene ring was there and you are treating it with nitronium ion, then which arrow pushing was correct?
Option A.
Okay. Others? First of all, nitronium ion is your electrophile or nucleophile?
Electrophile.
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 That means it needs electron, right? And benzene ring is your nucleophile. So while drawing the arrows, this one everyone should remember that if we are attacking through a pi bond, then arrow will go from center of that pi bond. And if we are attacking from the negative center, then electrons will go from that negative center. And the arrowhead will come to the electrophile. Okay. So in this case, because nucleophile is benzene, so electrons will go from the center of the benzene ring. So in this case, it is coming. Electrophile is attacking on nucleophile. This is wrong. In the C case, your benzene is attacking, that is correct, but oxygen is attacking back. That is not the case in the case of electrophilic aromatic substitution. And in the last case, nitronium ion, this is not the nitronium ion, so this will not attack. So the correct option is option A. Fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Huh. And after
Got
the
it.
attack of
Yes, ma'am.
benzene ring on the nitrogen, electrons will go towards the more electronegative atom, that is oxygen here. So this is the correct one. Okay, next question. When benzene and cyclopentene were mixed together in the presence of sulfuric acid, the expected product is A, B, or C. First of all, with sulfuric acid, which one of them will react? Benzene or your cyclopentene?
Cyclopentene.
Cyclopentene. Why not benzene?
Cyclopentene, ma'am.
Because in the case of benzene, your electrons are involved in aromaticity, so they are less available for donation. But in the case of cyclopentene, only pi bond single electron was there, so it can easily donate its electron. That pi electrons are easily available for donation. So after donation of after attacking on the proton, it will abstract one proton and carbocation will form. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
now benzene will attack at this carbocation and it leads to the formation of which product?
C product.
C product. Correct. And after the loss of proton, it will form your product. So correct option is option C. Okay. Next is the carbon 13 NMR signals are in the following order of the chemical shift delta values. In case of carbon 13, they are asking about B, A, and C. Now, in case of A, this will lie in the region of carbon that is unsaturated, will lie in the region of
100 to 150 ppm.
100 to 150 ppm. B,
0 to 50 ppm.
0 to 50 ppm. And C,
100 to 150 ppm.
100 to 150 ppm. So which option is correct?
Option C.
Option C. Okay. Although the aromatic region and that alkenic region will have some difference in delta values, but on the basis of the options we have to select one. So on the basis of region only we will select. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then the intermediate form during Friedel-Crafts acylation is, you have acid chloride and you are treating it with AlCl3. So chlorine will attack on,
Option A.
yeah, so you will get acylium ion and
Thallium ion.
AlCl3 negative. This will leave. So option A. Fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry, not option A. This is option B. Positive charge is on oxygen, not carbon.
Ah, yes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Option B. Don't get confused. Okay. 1,3-dibromobutane has 1H NMR signals. How many number of signals are there in 1,3-dibromobutane? This is the structure. So how many proton signals are there? First, for this methyl, then here one proton is there. So I'm numbering 1, 2, 3, 4 for this CH2 and one for CH2 attached to the bromine. So four different types of carbon protons are there. So there will be four signal in the 1H NMR spectra. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then the product of the following reaction is, first step is your
Then chlorine will attack the
attack
AlCl3 to
AlCl.
form this AlCl.
Then after the loss of this, you will get your carbocation, and then benzene will attack on that carbocation. So it will form this. And after the loss of proton, you will get your compound. That is alkyl substituted compound. Okay. So correct
Option
option is option
B. Yes.
B.
Option B. Yes, ma'am.
Then, for the following compound, which of the following statements are true? You have to find out chemical shift of A, B, and C. Now, cyanide is,
Ma'am, can you please explain the last question again?
yeah, sure. See, this first uh, third butyl chloride will attack with AlCl3, and it will, after the loss of that chloride, it will form this carbocation. Is this fine? Then, after the attack of benzene on that carbocation and the loss of proton, you will get alkyl substituted benzene. Any doubt?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's move on to the next one. In this case, you have to tell how many, like which of the statement is true. They are asking about the chemical shift of A, B, and C. Now, cyanide is electron withdrawing or electron donating?
Electron withdrawing.
Electron withdrawing. So that means
The drawing, man.
yeah. So that means electron density is decreasing on a ring, and the for cyno minus I effect is more than minus R effect. So minus I effect depends on distance. So that means the proton that is nearer to the cyanide is more deshielded than that is far away from it. So this implies A is most deshielded, then B, and then C. Okay. So the chemical shift of A is larger than B. Is this clear?
Can you explain once again?
Cyanide will pull the electron density from the benzene ring through minus I effect, and minus I effect is distance dependent. So the proton that is nearer to the group that is pulling the electrons will be most deshielded because electron density near to this proton is least. And if proton electron density is least, that means it will feel the applied magnetic field most. So that means it is deshielded and most downfield. Then meta, then para. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Next is the intermediate formed during bromination of benzene is. If you have benzene and you are treating it with bromine in the presence of some Lewis acid, then intermediate you have to tell. So first bromine will react with AlCl3 to form this intermediate, sorry, to form that reactive species. Then it will attack on that, benzene will attack on that bromine. So you will get this and here positive charge. Correct? Now you have to draw electron resonating structures. In while drawing resonating structures, electron pull you have to be aware about, that only will help. So these are the three intermediates you will get. So which option is correct?
D.
D. All of the above are correct. All these are resonating
D.
structures of each other. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next is for the following reaction, identify reagents. So first is which reaction? Friedel-Crafts
Critical acylation reaction.
acylation.
Acylation reaction.
Correct. So what is the, now two carbons are there. That means your acyl chloride must have two carbons. And then it is attached with the COCl. So according to that, CH3COCl, CH3CH2CCl, this is incorrect. CH3CH2COCl, this is correct. CH3COCl, this is incorrect. So we can eliminate two options on the basis of this. Now, for Friedel-Crafts acylation to take place, some Lewis acid must be there. In which option they are using Lewis
ALCL.
acid? AlCl.
Option C.
Option C. So the correct option is option C. And after getting this acylated product, substituted product, to remove the carbonyl group, we will use zinc amalgam and HCl,
HCl.
Simonsen reduction.
Yes, ma'am.
So we will get this product. Okay, so the correct option is option C. Fine. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Next is the
Yes,
number of distinct signals in 1H NMR spectrum of this compound. How many signals it will show?
Is it three signals?
Three signals. Plane of symmetry is there. So that means orthoprotons will show one signal, right? Para
Yes, ma'am.
will show one signal, and all these methyl protons will show one signal. So the total number of signals it will show is 3. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's all for today. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, actually, when was the session started? Like around 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Actually, I joined kind of a bit late, so because I was not aware about it. So
Okay.
the thing is, like, you're just explaining only about NMR, right? In the
NMR
starting.
prophylactic. Yeah, yeah. That's all.
Okay, ma'am. Fine.
You can leave now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.